περάσουμε τώρα στο επόμενο θέμα που αφορά την διάλεξη-συμπόσιο που πραγματοποιήθηκε στο οίκημα της Κυπριακής Ύπατης Αρμοστείας στο Λονδίνο. Η διάλεξη διεξήχθη την Παρασκευή 4 Απριλίου. Το συμπόσιο συνδιοργανώθηκε από το μορφωτικό τμήμα της Κυπριακής Ύπατης Αρμοστείας, το Ινστιτούτο Αρχαιολογίας στο UCL και το Βρετανικό Μουσείο. Στόχος του συμπόσιου ήταν η συνάντηση ερευνητών και επιμελητών που δραστηριοποιούνται στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο, με ειδικό ενδιαφέρον στην Κυπριακή Ιστορία και Αρχαιολογία, αλλά και την πολιτιστική κληρονομιά. Το συμπόσιο εγγενίασε ο Ύπατος Αρμοστής της Κύπρου στο Ηνωμένο Βασίλειο, κ. Ευριπίδης Ευρυβιάδης, ο οποίος καλωσόρισε θερμά το ενθουσιώδες κοινό. Ας παρακολουθήσουμε τη σύντομη ομιλία του.
We are especially delighted, of course, to welcome to London our special guest for tonight, Dr. Jennifer Webb, a true Aussie, an exceptional academic and friend of Cyprus, who will talk about Cyprus in the Middle Bronze Age. Professor Webb's lecture inaugurates the symposium Cypriot Archaeology, Pre-Modern Material Culture and Cultural Heritage in the United Kingdom, which will take place tomorrow morning at UCL, University College London Institute of Archaeology. This exciting lecture and symposium on Cypriot archaeology is the result of a fruitful collaboration, as Marius pointed out, between the Cyprus High Commission Cultural Section, UCL Institute of Archaeology, and the British Museum. So I would like to pay special thanks and tribute to Dr. Thomas Kiley. Thomas, where are you? Get up so everybody can see you. Thank you. Thank you. Curator of Cypriot Antiquities at the BM, at the British Museum. Dr. Maria Dikomitou Iliadou. Maria, where are you? Get up so everybody can see you. Marie Curie, postdoctoral research fellow at the Institute of Archaeology, and of course my cultural counselor, Dr. Marius Psaras, who needs no introduction, right?
Good. I haven't introduced myself.
All right, good. I cannot emphasize enough how much we value our long-standing relationship of mutual support and collaboration on multitude levels with the British Museum, Thomas. It is our third joint event. Despite this, of course, it is our third joint event with the UCL Institute of Archaeology in the last 12 months. We particularly cherish this growing and flourishing relationship with the Institute of Archaeology, as it is a world-leading academic institution which has nourished Cypriot archaeology since its infancy. Indeed, many distinguished Cypriot archaeologists have been awarded their doctoral titles by the Institute of Archaeology since the 1950s, including former and current directors of the Cyprus Department of Antiquities, as well as the Archaeological Research Unit at the University of Cyprus. Generally, for our Cyprus home, these lectures have become a crucial part of our strategic plan, if you like, to showcase and promote Cypriot cultural heritage in the United Kingdom in collaboration with prominent academics conducting research in, on, or Cyprus. Tonight's speaker is, of course, no exception. While of Australian descent, Jennifer Webb is as much Cypriot as any one of us. So we claim it. She's one of the most widely published archaeologists working in Cyprus, documenting with accuracy and interpreting with solid evidence ancient Cypriot material culture. She's chief editor of the renowned archaeological series Studies in Mediterranean Archaeology, which showcase Cypriot archaeology in its Mediterranean context, with distribution in all major libraries around the world. A truly benevolent mentor, she's always supportive to young researchers, generously offering her vast knowledge of Cypriot prehistory and guidance in material studies. Hi, Emma. More recently, Professor Webb has undertaken a most important task: the full publication of archaeological sites located in the Turkish occupied part of Cyprus, sites that were excavated before 1974, but remained neglected or undocumented ever since. By studying old excavation journals, discovering old maps, photographs and notes, and associating them with the surviving material in the Cyprus Museum, Professor Webb has managed to bring archaeological sites in Karni, Ambeligu, and Lάπηθο back to life, making them part of current literature, and thus filling a significant gap in research. And for that, we are thankful to you, Professor. Her lecture tonight is precisely about such an archaeological site located in the beautiful village of Lάπηθο. Dear friends and colleagues, I am confident that the professor will be her professor's talk will be most illuminating talk that I'm sure all of us will enjoy. Without much ado, I would like to pass the floor to Dr. Jennifer Webb, but before I do that, in my old age, I'm becoming a photographer, because whether we like it or not, digital is part of our life, including Twitter. So I would like each one of you to give me a huge smile, because I want to click this.
Ακολούθησε ομιλία της Dr. Jennifer Webb με τίτλο «Η Κύπρος στη Μέση Εποχή του Χαλκού, Νέα Ευρήματα από τις Αγγλοκυπριακές Ανασκαφές στη Λάπηθο το 1913». Ας παρακολουθήσουμε ένα μικρό απόσπασμα από την πολύ ενημερωτική και αναλυτική ομιλία της Dr. Jennifer Webb.
Symposium, Mr. Marios Psaras from the Cyprus High Commission, Maria Dikomitou Eliadou from UCL, and Dr. Thomas Kiley from the British Museum, my friends and colleagues. The focus of tonight's presentation will be, as you've already heard, the Anglo-Cypriot excavations at Lάπηθος in 1913, which uncovered 62 tombs of the early and middle Bronze Age, and on the work which my small team and I have been doing over the last few years to bring this material, or the material that was recovered in those tombs, to full publication. I also hope to convince you along the way of the importance of publishing old excavations, both because, as Sir Mortimer Wheeler famously wrote, all excavation is destruction, and excavation without publication is wanton destruction. And in this case specifically because Lάπηθος is on the north coast of Cyprus, and the northern half of Cyprus, as you know all too well, has been inaccessible to legitimate excavation since the Turkish invasion of the island in 1974. As a result, it has rather dropped out of focus for many archaeologists whose work has necessarily shifted to other parts of the island. I think it's very important that we redress this imbalance if we can, and that we retrieve as much as we can from earlier excavations in areas that we can no longer work on directly. I also want to propose a somewhat new understanding of Cyprus in the Middle Bronze Age. And by the Middle Bronze Age, something else on that slide. I thought I had the dates on the slide. By the Middle Bronze Age, I mean the period between about 2000 and 1700 BC. I want to propose a new interpretation, a somewhat new interpretation, one that suggests that Cyprus was rather more interconnected with the world around it and developing somewhat more complex economic structures internally than is generally speaking currently thought to be the case. There are many reasons why the north coast of Cyprus might have played an important role in the Middle Bronze Age. It lies within sight of the south coast of Anatolia, which is about 65 kilometres away at the nearest point. And in the early second millennium, the period we're talking about, the Middle Bronze Age, the maritime trade routes which linked southeast Anatolia to the Aegean and the Cyclades passed between the north coast of Cyprus and the south coast of Anatolia. So communities living on the north coast of Cyprus were very well placed to engage with this sea traffic if they had the capacity and the desire to do so. All the more so because this was a trade in raw metals, copper, tin, gold, silver and lead. And Cyprus is one of the 5 richest sources of copper in the world, with over 90 copper ore bodies in the upper and lower pillow lavas of the Troodos Mountains. Within this generally favourable environment, Lάπηθος is particularly well positioned. It's the only coastal settlement we know of on the north coast, and one of very few anywhere on the island in the Middle Bronze Age. It's located where the north coastal plain reaches its widest point of 5 kilometres, so it has the potential to sustain a reasonably large population. It has several small bays which could have provided anchorages or beaching spots for ancient ships. It lies at the foot of Mount Kiparissovuno, which is the highest peak of the Pentadactylos range, or the Kyrenia range, and which would certainly have served as a highly visible landmark for passing ships. And it's also located midway between the two key passes through this part of the Pentadactylos range at Agirda and Panagra, which offer the only access south from that northern coastal plain to the central lowlands, the Messaouria, and then onward to the copper ore bodies in the Troodos Mountains. So, being located between those two passes, it has the potential to control both of them. The clays of Lapithos are amongst the best in Cyprus for the production of pottery, and Lapithos has always been famous as a centre of pottery production. It has two major springs, Kefalovrisi and Vrisi-Tubaba, which in recent times have been used for perennial flow irrigation, making this one of the agriculturally most productive areas on the island. It also has the highest annual rainfall of all the coastal areas of Cyprus. Indeed, Myers, who led the Anglo-Cypriot expedition of 1913, described Lapithos as one of the paradises of Cyprus. Another unique feature of Lapithos, which I suspect was very important in antiquity, is that it has two defensible plateaus, which you can see on this beautiful picture that was taken by the Swedish Cyprus expedition in 1927. At Kastros and Anastasia, you can see these two very steep-sided rocky plateaus. We don't know where the ancient settlement of Lapithos was. It hasn't been excavated, but it was probably near, under the modern village, and no doubt, I suspect, close to and around and on those two natural acropolises. So Lapithos is very well located. We need to remember, however, that if Lapithos or any other community on the north coast needed secure access to copper, either for their own purposes or to feed into an international network, external network, they had to control those two passes south to the copper ore bodies in the Troodos. And they also had to be able to manage the intervening communication and transport routes. The nearest mining areas to the southwest are at Mbelikou and around the ore bodies at Skoliotissa. That's about 40 kilometres away from Lapithos. In the south-west, there are mines at Mathiatis, Kamya. They're even further away. Cyprus in the Middle Bronze Age, if you read the literature that's current today, it's often described as small-scale, village-oriented, agrarian, conservative, and only minimally engaged, if engaged at all, in external trade. So the accepted wisdom is that it's not really until the end of this period, around about 1700 BC, and the transition to the Late Bronze Age, that social structures on Cyprus began to become more complex, and the island opened up to the outside world. I think there are a number of problems with this scenario, but I want to draw your attention just to one of them. Almost everybody agrees that the ancient name of Cyprus was Alashia, or Alazia. There are references to Alashia in cuneiform tablets from Babylon, Alak and Mari in inland Syria, which indicate that they were receiving copper from the land of Alashia from the late 19th century or the early 18th century. And lead isotope analysis, which is a method that is used to identify the source of copper in copper and bronze artefacts, also suggests that Cypriot copper was in use in Crete, in the Cyclades, and perhaps on the Greek mainland from the 19th century BC, if not earlier. So it would appear that one or more communities in Cyprus were providing copper for export to the Aegean and the Levant from the 19th century, at least. That is, during the Middle Bronze Age, the period that we're interested in, at least 100 years before Cyprus is supposed to have opened up to the outside world. So there's something of a discrepancy between the archaeological evidence, as it's currently interpreted, and the textual and analytical data. And the Anglo-Cypriot excavations at Lapithos of 1913 have real potential to throw light on this dilemma, because if Cyprus was supplying metal, copper, into an international trade work in the first half of the second millennium BC, it would almost certainly have been doing so from the north coast. And if we're looking for a community on the north coast which might have been involved, then Lapithos is pretty well the only contender. Vounous is another very important site on the north coast. It was a major site there in the early Bronze Age, but it falls really, it decreases in importance in the Middle Bronze Age, and it's also not located on the coast. So I think Vounous may well have been involved as well, but Lapithos is the major site on the north coast at this time. So, to the story. In 1913, John Myers, who was Wickham Professor of Ancient History at the University of Oxford, was invited by the Cyprus Museum Committee to carry out excavations in Cyprus. He had already had a long association with Cyprus, and Menelaos Markidis, who was the first curator of the Cyprus Museum, had been a student of Myers at Oxford. The excavations were to be carried out with the assistance of Markidis in the name of the Cyprus Museum. All the finds were to remain in the Cyprus Museum, and the right of publication was to belong jointly to Myers and Markidis. Myers requested permission to bring an assistant, a young man. This is a photograph of him taken much later in life. A young man called Leonard Halford Dudley Buxton, is known as Dudley Buxton. Buxton had done a degree in classics with Myers, and he also had a diploma of physical anthropology. So I assume the thinking was that if they found human skeletal remains, he would be a very useful person to have with them. They excavated at Lefkoniko, at Enkimi and Lambursa, and while they were working at Lambursa, which is very close to Lapithos, they were told about tombs of the early and Middle Bronze Age that had been found very close by at Lapithos and that were being disturbed or looted at that time. So they decided to work at that site as well. And it's at this point that Myers essentially leaves the picture. The task of excavating at Lapithos was given to Buxton and Markidis, while Myers went off to work at Kition in Larnaca. Markidis also had museum duties, so in effect the excavations were directed and recorded entirely by Leonard Halford Dudley Buxton. Over 4 weeks, from the 20th of November to the 22nd of December, he supervised the excavation of 62 Bronze Age tombs at a locality known as Risi Barba, named after one of those springs. And he also excavated another 4 Iron Age tombs in the hills above the village. That's something like 16 tombs a week, which is terrifying. We're not told the size of his workforce, but in what he calls his day sheets, the entries for the first 21 of the first 35 tombs record the name of the workmen or the workmen who were responsible for excavating those tombs. And I've just show you some of the extracts from his day notes here. This is tomb 15, which was excavated by Xenophon Mikhail, and you can see it says, "Well done." This is tomb 35, which was excavated by Yoris Kosti, "Quite well." This is tomb 21, which is a very important tomb, which was excavated by Nikos Kyriakou, "Not very well." And this is doing funny names. Tomb 17, excavated by Pandelis Savas and Yanakis Christofi, and they got a B-. So this, not only does this show that Buxton had a sense of humour, but it also shows that he had at least 27 different people working for him, because there are 27 different names. And that's an underestimate, because he does also mention that there were women working on site. So he had a very large team. So picture the scene. Buxton is 24 years old. Apart from a season in the Sudan with the Welcome expedition the year before, he's had no field experience. He's not an archaeologist, he's an anthropologist. He's never been to Cyprus before. He presumably has little or no familiarity with Cypriot pottery, although he may have studied some when he was a student of Myers, and little, if any, modern Greek. Myers, in fact, told him to bring a dictionary. Winter's coming on. He's got at least 30 people digging 10 or 15 tombs at the same time. And on top of this, his real interest was in the modern population. Remember, he's an physical anthropologist. During his time in Cyprus, he took cranial measurements and recorded the physical characteristics, the eye colour, the hair colour, the stature, of over 1,000 living Cypriots. And he later published 2 very substantial papers on that work. He was also taking photographs, many of which are now in the Ύπατος Museum. The majority were taken to illustrate his anthropological work, so they show people either facing forward or lined up sideways like this. Others show craft activities. He was very interested in traditional crafts and particularly spinning and weaving. There are general views of, landscapes. This is a photograph taken in the hills above Lάπηθο.
Ολόκληρη αυτή την ενημερωτική διάλεξη θα σας την παρουσιάσουμε προσεχώς στην εκπομπή με το φακό του Hellenic TV.